ہائے کربلا والوں، چھوٹے چھوٹے بچوں نے جنگ کی اجازت لی، کم سنی نے رخصت لی، قوم کی حمایت میں عزت شہادت لی، زندگی کو کیا کہیے، موت سے خدمت، ہائے ہائے کربلا والوں، کوئی تم میں اکبر تھا، کوئی تم میں اصغر تھا، کوئی مثل جعفر تھا، کوئی مثل حیدر میں، دو جہاں سے بڑھ کر تھا، زیر تیغ سنتے ہیں فاطمہ کا گھر بر تھا، ہائے کربلا والوں، صلوات بھیجو۔ Assalamu alaikum. Just a few quick announcements. Anyone looking to sponsor Majalis, where it's at $450, if, please see any of the members of the committee, Yasir, Ali Husnain, Muhammad Kazmi. Any of the youths, mashallah, it's wonderful to see so many of you here. If you're looking to recite a speech, tilawat, poetry, please see brother myself. A humble request for Surah Fatiha for the sponsors of tonight's Majlis. Thank you. Brothers and sisters, mashallah, we're honored to welcome a speaker today who not only carries the deep reverence for the legacy of the Holy Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam, but also stands at the tradition and the transformation at that intersection. He's someone who gets it. You know, he's walked the halls of top universities, mashallah. He's worked in high tech and defense, but he has never left his faith behind. In fact, he's buried his compass. Dr. Shabbir Kirmani is a scholar who speaks our language. So it's really nice to see all the youth here. You know, he connects the timeless message of Karbala to the struggles we all face today: identity, passion, places in our schools. As I said earlier, all the youth here, you know, if you ever feel like you've been caught, in talk is for you, and make sure you try to attend all the nights tonight. Your full attention and your warmest welcome with the loud salawat to Dr. Shabbir Kirmani. Also, humble request to please move forward. So we have people come in, we'll have a little more space. Thank you, everyone. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salam.
فاتح بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فوض أمري إلى الله إن ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى النصير وصلاة والإكرام على الرسول الجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل على عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي أما بعد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله نور السماوات والأرض صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد My respected question, what is freedom? Together, embarking on our conversation and our topic of the Husseini civilization. The concept of an Islamic civilization living in our world today in the 21st century. And we covered a lot of ground, but I want to highlight the three main things that I want to recap for those who are here and for those who may not have been here on today. Looking at the Husseini Islamic civilization, many people may have a different conception of what Islam is. So when we define it as the Husseini civilization, we're saying Islam as defined by Imam Hussein, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ahlul Bayt, and their teachings. It's not distinct, it's Islam. So now on that basis, the number one major takeaway was really contemplating and thinking of the future of our community. Where are we going? What's our trajectory? The same way if you have a business, if you have a goal of big times, you have your own goals of where you want to go. So maybe that may be trying to get certain experience in certain areas and working in certain places eventually to make your goal. So what is the trajectory of our community? Have we planned? Have we figured out where we want to go? Or want to go with the flow, or go with wherever society takes us? So number one was the question around three categories of people. The first being those who are teaching people, who are helping other people learn, who are actually helping people expand in their education. Thank you. And then there's the second category. The second category are those who are students on the path of knowledge, who are trying to glean, who are trying to learn, who are trying to absorb. And then there's a third category, which are those people who are like the leader. Actually, we're supposed to be in the first two categories. The third category is just going with major theme of light that we opened up was there may be a duality of life or a plurality of lives that people of faith, not only Muslims, Christians, Jews, other faiths as well, are living a duality in the world. There's one life in the, you go fill in the blanks. And then there's another life outside of faith, of compartmentalization of religion, such that if I'm a Christian, my religion is on Sunday, or sometimes Saturday these days, or sometimes it's, other days of the week. If I'm someone from the Jewish faith, it's Sabbath, Saturdays. If I'm a Muslim, it's Friday, Jum'ah, if I can make it. And it's compartmentalized to those. value of religion in the 21st century. And that's something we're going to unpack in the next few nights. So the second element is there may be multiple lives that people are living. One life is my career goals, my aspirations, and sometimes they never meet the religious life and the other lives. The third element, very importantly, as it relates to this, would have to do was using Karbala to inspire us, the spark of Karbala, to actually do something about our trajectory, our future, and say that, okay, if we have these multiplicity of lives, how can I actually make it one life that allows to achieve and obtain the goals that I have? What if it didn't have to be that they have to be in divergent directions? What if it could be that I can emphasize my faith, and my faith, especially Islam, at its essence encourages humanitarianism. It encourages compassion. It encourages love. It encourages excellence. And so we left with off there, and I'm building on that tonight, inshallah. That is. So tonight, subtopic that we'll get in. Each night, there'll be a subtopic. All of them relate back to the broader theme, which is, where are we going? What's our future? How do we build and reestablish this civilization through a renaissance, a rebirth, which is sparked by Karbala, to revive the spirit of Islam, to revive the essence of Islam. There was a time and there was a period, civilizations bring a lot to the world, right? The mathematics, the science, go down the list and fill in the blanks. All of these things were being provided to the world by people who were inspired by their faith. In fact, the world looks at poets, Rumi and the likes. Sometimes we in our modern world try to strip or remove from Rumi and Hafiz their religion. Hafiz was a Hafiz of the Quran, right? That's why they call him Hafiz, right? Their kids Rumi today, right? Rumi, but inspiration is Ahlul Bayt, Imam Ali, by the way, right? If you go to, there's an interesting book I recommend you all read. It's called The Prophet's Heir, published by Yale University Press. Dr. Hassan Abbas has written the book. And Dr. Abbas said something interesting. He said, you know, if you go to the grave of Rumi today, you'll find the name of Sunni. Why does he have the name of the 12th grave? And you'll find that the Turkish Empire, the Ottomans, that those supreme powers of the world. Now it's America. In a few years, it'll be China, if it's not already China. Prior to this, it was the United Kingdom. Prior to that, in the Western Bloc, it was the Dutch, Amsterdam, and the likes. Prior to that, it was the Ottomans. And the Ottomans followed a form of Islam called Sunni Ahlul Baytism. That's what they called it. Sunni Ahlul Baytism, meaning, sure, but under the Ottomans, Jannatul Baqi was still there, right? Having said that, now, I'm going to try to make a pact with you that I'm going to be succinct in timing, but I also, that requires and that necessitates two-way street. Last night, I may have gone a little bit overboard. A little bit of that was my fault. A little bit of that was your fault. I didn't have my watch hand. It was not beautiful languages in the world, but I'm working on some of them. I have languages, Urdu, Farsi, Arabic. Language of the world, which I wish I understood, and this is if any of you know it. It's a beautiful language. And there's a line that I know Punjabi, and forgive me for, but there's a poet who I really like, who's written in Urdu and in Farsi, and in Punjabi. And he said, कुछ शहर के लोग भी जालिम इंसान, कुछ 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 सानू maranda shock we see. They said that sometimes it takes two hands to clap. A little bit the people of the city wanted to kill me, and a little bit it was from your side of not being prepared, and that way. Having said that, I'll try to keep it tight, but I implore and I request your indulgence to stay with me on this conversation. Tonight's conversation is on freedom, as defined by the Quran, the Ahlul Bayt, and the teachings of Islam, but also our world. Allow me to explain. One thing that I'm going to harp on, need to consider, is a voice of Islam in America, an American voice of Islam. Land at that junction from our community is diverse. I was just in Dearborn a couple of weeks ago. There were people in our community, I don't know, sometimes we think it's other people's problems. The Titanic? There's at least 4 documented Shia sisters who were on the Titanic, who lost their life. They've been coming, they're from the Lebanese community, and I know some of the relatives, the Makki family and other families who are there. So they've been coming to America for quite some time. My father came in 46, prior to about when he came to study at Cornell in New York. He would get the city, and then he would take Greyhound up to Cornell. And on the way there, he had one of those rude awakenings that young people who come to America for the first time experience, and they realize there's a duality of America. There's some beautiful aspects of American society, and there's some aspects that you question what's going on. Similar to today. So he said they would stop again, and someone who's African American would come to him and say, "Can you do me a favor?" He said, "Can you get me a sandwich?" He said, "Okay, why can't you get a sandwich? I'm happy to help." But he said, "You see that sign over there?" And he would point to a sign. And the sign would say at the rest area, "No dogs or blacks allowed." And this is a rude awakening for someone who's coming and thinking America is a brilliant society. Now, by the way, we may not have those signs in America, but the remnants of it are. Someone may ask, what is your loyalty to? What is your principle to? And if someone asks you where your allegiance is, I want you to say that your allegiance is to truth. Your allegiance is to justice. And you'll find that the founding fathers, wherever that may be, the founding fathers of this country, they were forward thinkers. Now, by the way, people are complex. We have dimensionalities of our lives that are difficult. We work together to try to solve those problems together. Similarly, the founding fathers were good in some areas. They were trying to create a just society in the wake of the Protestant Reformation and the difficulties that they had faced. And also, they were also blind to some things, such as many of them were blind to slavery. They still had slavery. But we in Greater Boston, I'm a big history buff, and you can look at it as ibadah. I look at it as worship. I look at it as a form of the same way I pray, studying history, because my imam, my Ahlul Bayt are telling me to study history. I look at it as worship. So I start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim the same way. My salah with niyat, I begin studying history that way because I look at it that way. First principle is every moment that you are awake in the morning to the end of your sleep, 24/7 is a moment of worship. You don't think that God, if you find a cure to cancer, you don't think God's going to reward you for that? You don't think if you find a solution to the economic turmoils of the world, the imbalances of the world, the injustices of the world, that Allah's not going to reward you for that? If that's why was the Prophet, why was Imam Ali fighting in the battlefield of life? They wouldn't have done that. So I am speaking to you as an American, having been born and raised here. And what I mean is, you may find more Islamic principles in America than any other country, or at least many so-called Muslim countries. Can I speak this way in some Muslim countries? Can I have a majlis the way I am? Can I just say, without having to give a script beforehand, come with me on a journey. The journey is, Congressman Keith Ellison from Minnesota is swearing in as the first Muslim congressman in the history of the United States. And it comes to his private swearing in ceremony circa 2007. I want to swear in, but up until that moment, most people have sworn in him. And they accommodated him in the most beautiful way. They went to the Library of Congress, the largest library in the world, and they went and they got a copy of the Quran that had inscribed on it the letters T and J. And he swore in on it, and that was a chastity. And when he swore in Quran, that left a question in someone's mind. What was this TJ, University of Texas, Austin? Which I too is a fantastic community, and they have a fantastic Ahlul Bayt society there, by the way. And so Dr. Spellberg said, what is this TJ, and what is this Quran that was in the Library of Congress that's 200 years old? Turns out, the T and J stood for Thomas Jefferson. And it was a personal copy of Thomas Jefferson's own Quran. By the way, he had not one copy of student, and then his library, and then he got a second copy of, or translation of the Quran. What? So she wrote a fantastic book. It's called Thomas Jefferson's Quran, Islam and the Founding Fathers. And you'll find that in that you can find a lot of the history of what is principles that were founded, and this country was founded upon. This. Freedom is our conversation, number one. The Quran talks about from beginning to end, God and His monotheism, His oneness. Another theme is justice. Keep these two in mind. Adala. Recall, as a base principle, as a reminder, there's some things that we may defer to scholarship to learn from. Broadly, Islam has two main branches, Usuluddin and Furuuddin, right? Furuuddin are those things that have to do with your namaz, roza, hajj, zakat, khums. Furuuddin, the branches of taqleed. In that you can follow a marja, in that you can follow your respected scholar. Taqleed. You can't say, I follow Maulana, Sayyid, this and this. Yes, you can read their book, sure, but you can't say, I do taqleed of Ayatul Sistani, Ayatul X, Y, and Z in the area of usul. Each and every one of us has to have our own istidlal, our own dalil, our own evidence, our own proof, our own rationale, our own understanding as to why we believe what we believe. So amongst the Usuluddin, as you know, are Tawheed, and each of them are very important. So these are throughout the Quran as well. Some other themes. Sometimes we focus on certain things, we sometimes remiss others or forget others. For example, when the Quran tells us about reflecting, contemplating, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا we have made the Quran, it's something that to contemplate on. And easy. Knocks on their heart, they don't contemplate on the Quran. Traditions from the Prophet that says contemplation better than 70 years of worship. Huh? What? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ, we have put signs for them in the horizons and within themselves. The macro and the micro. So this led to a generation or generations of Muslims who were telling me, I need to contemplate on the heavens and the earth. I need to contemplate on the ant. I need to contemplate on the bee. I need to contemplate on all of these other. Share with you another concept of freedom. Freedom and justice go hand in hand. Second principle. Third principle is understanding the roots of our society. There's a moment in time, a very famous incident, where Imam Ali is ruling over the Islamic Republic, where he is ruling over modern, say upwards of 50 states of the modern world. Situation where he goes to court, and the situation is attributed to say that eventually he left it in the custody of someone, and eventually it was sold to somebody else who got it, and it was theirs. But there was a middleman who was he was shady. He wasn't very clean cut. So eventually, there's a Jewish man who obtains the shield, or some say the saddle of Imam Ali, and he has it in his possession. Hijrat from Mecca to Medina, al-Mu'mineen back in the city, he said, Ali, I want you to amana, certain trusts that have kept with me by the people who are not Muslims. Some of my opposition have kept trust with me because trust me. I need you to make sure you stay behind and give them back their trust and then come to Medina. So, this Ali, this Amir al-Mu'mineen ends up in court. Now, side note, which is important, before in fact, he knows Islamic law, but he's laying a principle. When he his book, The Voice of Human Justice, so Adalat al-Insaniya. And so eventually they end up in court, and when they end up in court, there's a circumstance and there's a situation where the judge, he refers to Imam Ali as Abu al-Hasan, and he addresses the other party. Imam Ali is the plaintiff, the defendant is the Jewish man. The rule of possession, because he has possessions, forfeit, that's the majority of the law, honorific title. And then, eventually, he stops the judge and he says, you called that man by his first name and you gave me an honorific title of Abu al-Hasan. Before the eyes of the law, we are all the same. So what you call him is what you call me. Why do you need to say that? Who are your witnesses? And eventually, Imam Ali, all of the decorum, knowing all principles, knowing all the law, inside going and playing along with, going with all of the principles and the procedures of the court of law. And eventually, long story short, the judge says, Ya Ali, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, or he refers to him as Ali ibn Abi Talib. After being corrected, and he says, you know, I have to give the case who's it's on his side. Imam Ali clean. He said, I bought it from someone else. I didn't know the background of it. The Jewish man, as Budak says in his book, he stopped Imam Ali, he said, salam, or shalom, perhaps he said, whatever he said. He said, look, can I get this straight? Can we get this right? He said, what is it? He said, you are the Khalifa of the Muslim ruler of the Muslim empire? He said, yeah. Took you to court? He said, yeah. And I won the. I've understood the justice of God on earth. Side, you didn't abuse that power. It's a lesson that our society needs to learn today, by the way. Things don't change. The principles remain the same. So now, this is Amir al-Mu'mineen, right? Now, juxtapose that with another story by the name of John Adams, one of the founding fathers of this country, who happened to be the president, the second president, the first vice president, the second president of the United States. And he was the only founding father, by the way, who didn't own slaves on a matter of principle. Only one that we know. The situation is, there's a skirmish and the local colonies and the colonialists, to the point that British soldiers killed some original Americans. Some original Americans would probably be natives, right? Some Americans who had just formed in the colonies, who were part of the colonies of Massachusetts. Now, there was a dilemma. And the dilemma was clear that these people had been killed, but they said we have to have a trial. But there was another complexity that emerged, another matter, and that was in New England who was willing to defend the British soldier. They were patriots, right? They said, how are we going to defend a British soldier? We're Americans. But there was one attorney by the name of John Adams who said, I will defend him. So I'm going to defend him. And he defended him. Because he said, I intend to show that this country is run. Leaders should think about that today, and those founding fathers today. Nonetheless, you know, he in fact, and he got the British soldier acquitted in America, in Massachusetts. I don't know about you, but I see the alignment with Islam there. And the principle is, sometimes we have to remind our society of where its roots came from. We may have, and I may have issues with just as much as you, but there's some beautiful aspects of society here as well. So now comes to freedom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, one of the themes that Allah talks about is Tawheed. If you read the Quran sometimes and you read it at a surface level, you would sometimes say, and forgive me for saying this, that God says, worship me, only worship me. You know, sometimes in between me and you, it sounds like it's, if you read it, you, why do you need me to worship you? Why do you need to acknowledge you, God? Why? You made the heavens and the earth. And you realize that if you go deeper, there's a deeper message in there. That even God wanting us and needing us to worship Him is out of His compassion. Why? We as human beings, we have a tendency. You know what that tendency is? It's a well-known phenomenon, right? Someone becomes a charismatic leader and people begin to follow, right? That's what happened in World War II. Some say Hitler was a charismatic speaker. He used that for whatever he used it for. Some people say, or other leaders were charismatic leaders. And so people end up becoming hero worshippers, such that whatever this person's saying is right, and then sometimes we become blind to. Allah says in the Quran, created. Why are you created? Allah gives a clear answer. And there are some verses of the Quran. By the way, we need to be careful. Sometimes we use verses as a translation of ayat or ayah. That's borrowing from other faiths. That's not in Islam. Ayah or ayat literally means sign. Each of these example and the notion with respect to how this relates to you and I is God says, I have not made humans and jinn. I have not made creation except to worship me. Now why? Why? By the way, I want you to really stop and meditate on this for a second. For 10 seconds. I'm going to not speak. Really think about why God wants that. Right now. Contemplate. I want you to worship me. Why? Because that is the essence of freedom. God knows that we are not free. And He said that you're going to worship someone, and I want you to make sure that you prostrate to me. And when you prostrate to me, that emancipates you from all other slavery. Example, there's a writer, you may have read her book, Karen Armstrong. She's written many books, A History of God, 5,000 years, studying to be a nun at Oxford, Apna conference. Yeah. So we had a very interesting discussion. And so then the question ensued, I'd been reading her book from some, and the question ensued, why didn't Judaism, why didn't Islam, why didn't Christianity outright forbid and ban slavery? Like explicitly, right? Missing a beat. She said, slaves. We're just economic slaves. Oh. Keep that on ice. Come with me to another moment. There's a moment that we typically recite in Masaib. I'm not in Masaib. I'll be there shortly. But it's a moment when Imam Hussein is on the plains of Karbala and he is about to depart this world for no time. The enemy, according to know if he's alive or dead. And there's a cry, tell whether Hussein is alive or dead. He said, I'm giving the order, go and loot the tents of the women and children. And the narrations say, order was given and heard by the men of Yazid. Imam Hussein, which his body seems still, it seems as though he supported himself on his elbow, and he gave a statement for history. And he looked, Kunu ahraran fi dunyakum. If you have no belief, if you have no religion, if you have no belief in the hereafter or the day of judgment, if you have none of that, then at least be free. I would say, Imam Hussein, 1,000 pardons. People who you are speaking to are dressing, they have the cavalry, they have the horses, they have the ammunitions, they have the numbers, they have the power. They weren't. They were shackled. And we are shackled. Shackles are not always physical. They may be other forms. Ibrahim's story teaches us. Imam Hussein's story teaches us. that all other slavery. The poet says, वो एक सजदा जिसे तू गिरा समझा है हजार सजदों से देता है आदमी को नजात. That one prostration, Ya Allah, that you accept, you emancipate mankind from 1,000 different sajdas. Someone to their boss, someone to the president, someone to of what's coming in my life. There are means. The source is ultimately God. La ilaha illallah. खुदी का सिर्र नेहा. La ilaha illallah. ये दौर अपने बराहीम की तलाश में है. सनम कदा है जहां ला इलाहा illallah. The poet says that this world is looking for its Ibrahim. It's looking for Ibrahim too. When the people left this, he left one big one, right? He left one big one, if it can answer you. And the poet says this era, this time is still looking for its Ibrahim. It's looking for its Ibrahim. Sanam Kada, it's a house of temples. This whole world is a house of temples. Sometimes idols, a house of idols. Idols are sometimes physical, but many of the idols that we deal with today are not physical. We're shackled, enslaved to them. I'll give you an example. Sometimes you learn this. Los Angeles, and for those there, when I go to a city, I try to go to the museum. And you learn a lot from the museums. In the Getty, I'll never forget that moment when I'm there and I'm trying to understand this. And there was a modern art exhibit. And in the modern art exhibit at the Getty, one of the artworks that I saw on the wall, from the distance, it was a canvas, bunch of, I'm going to start naming names because and what you're wearing, I'll get in trouble. But there were logos of brands. And that's from the distance, but then I started going closer. And as I got closer to the artwork, I saw all the logos. But as I got closer, there were little tiny chains around all of the logos. And the title of the artwork was Materialism. I'm in the boat just as much as you. This was a gift, by the way. Having said that, I'm a Floridian. I gotta keep. If I think that my name, my family name, these are all forms of idols. I'm not saying don't care about them, don't worry about them. What I'm saying is, be free. And on the other side of that freedom is something amazing. You know, I grew up, maybe you grew up like this too, but I remember growing up listening to Majlis in DC, when I was growing up there in Florida, in other world. And you know, I used to leave with more confusion than, so for example, there were mixed signals, mixed messages that left me confused. On one side, I would hear from the pulpit, from the mimbar, from the majlis, and by the way, these were sincere people who were giving the message of Imam Hussein. No, I don't mean to be harsh in any way. And at the same time, in the same breath, or the next line, what established Islam in the early days? What supported Islam in the early days? It was the power and the position of Abu Talib. It was the sword of Ali, and it was the wealth of Khadija. I was like, hold on a second. And the Maulana would recite a long majlis, and then on 9th, I don't know if you do it here, 9th Muharram, 8th Muharram, 9th Muharram, 10th Muharram, sometimes there's a break. At the peak time, you know what happened? Maulana's world, just work on the akhirah. Don't worry about all of those things. Forget it. Just you're the managing committee and says, Mu'mineen, Assalamu alaikum, we need to collect $100,000 tonight. Where's that money coming from? Manna salwa? What? What's going on? And there's many other forms of it. My hope is that we don't do that. I'll leave with this and we'll decide. What's your dua? And what's the understand the Quran completely and comprehensively without understanding the Bible? What if I told you that? What if I told you that you wouldn't know some of the references that the Quran is giving if you have not studied the Old Testament, for example, in its original form? What if I told you that the Quran references David and Goliath and King Saul and Solomon? Interestingly, people say, there's a side note, that people don't have time, they don't have attention spans, right? You hear that a lot, right? But for sports, we have attention spans. For FIFA, NBA, golf, I'm a golfer, I'm a tennis player, we make time for those things, right? Sometimes we make time for 2 and 3 hour podcasts, don't we? It's interesting to us, right? I'm just giving points of reflection. And contrast that with the Quran. And I want you to think about this in the next few nights. What do you want, $1 million house? Pray for all of that. It's fantastic. You want to be a billionaire? You want to find a solution to something? Whatever dua you have, the biggest dua that you can conceive, put that in your mind right now. Think about it for 10 seconds. If you care to share. You don't even need to share, just think about it. And compare your prayer to a prayer of a prophet in the Quran. And the prayer that's in the Quran is that of Solomon, Sulaiman. And I want you to think about his prayer, and I want you to never forget it. In the Quran, Sulaiman prays to God. He says, Rabbi, habli mulkan la yanbaghi ahadan min ever have. What? 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 A kingdom which no one will ever have. We ask for relative things, right? Billionaire, right? Because today we've seen billionaires. But he's saying, God, from now till the end of time, and he's a prophet, beat that. Investigate our religion. We have to reinvestigate Islam. It was a religion of people who are in the battlefield of life. Teddy Roosevelt, the president, first Roosevelt, during World War I of a speech that he gave at the Sorbonne, the University of. And one of the called Citizenship in a Republic. But an excerpt of it is very famous. It's called The Man. It's helped athletes such as LeBron James and many other difficulties. And the principle, and from all walks of life. And I'm paraphrasing, but Roosevelt said, the credit, and you think about gladiator times, the credit does not belong to the man who's sitting in the stands and pointing the finger at the one who's on the arena, on the battlefield of life. He's pointing the finger. You could have done something. They're marred with blood and sweat and toil, and they are daring greatly, courageously. If you want to know who's on the battlefield of life, the athlete who's playing, they can't hear people in the stands. If you who was in the battlefield of life, Imam Ali was in the battlefield of life. Hussein ibn Ali was in the battlefield. So what needs to be revived? That's the question I leave with you. It's the spirit of Islam. The spirit that says that I have God on my side, in the sense that I have the power of God, because He's the essence of the root of my power, so I can use that for the betterment of society, for a just society, for a fair society, for a peaceful society, meaning nothing's impossible. God, that's what the goal is. I asked you, dua is a beautiful thing. And Allah wants us to dua. The informal to us, it's like here, my creation and me. Otherwise, everywhere else Allah uses formal. We. There's one ayah where Allah says, وَإِذَا سَعْلَكَ إِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاءِ إِذَا دَعَانِي فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي وَلْيُؤْمِنُوا بِي. I answer the supplication. Goes to pray. What are you praying for? Pray for the things that you want, but pray that you're not a slave to them. And it's possible to have the nice things and not be a slave to them. That's the critical message. But there's something bigger than that. You know, there's something even bigger than the kingdom of Solomon, if you want to pray for. I use some poetry to get of a good poet is that they'll condense a 1-hour lecture into one line. And the mark of a good orator is that they'll extend one line into 1 hour. And so I want to use this to help us reflect. दवा की तलाश में रहा, दुआ को छोड़कर मैं रह न सका दुनिया, हैरान हूं अपनी हसरतों पे इकबाल, खुदा से सब कुछ मांग लिया खुदा को छोड़कर. I ask God for everything except Himself. I ask God for everything except God. You want to know what the biggest treasure is? By Arafah of Imam Hussein on the plains of Karbala. Ilahi said on the my Lord, who has lost you. And what has he lost who has gained you? Wealth and riches are turned upside down. By the way, Imam Hussein, Imam Hassan, Imam Rada, many other Imams, Imam Sadiq, were actually very affluent, by the way. They gave everything away, that was different. How did Imam Hussein and Waqf it? Where did that come from? Abdullah ibn Ja'far al-Tayyan of Bibi Zainab, he was like the World Bank and the IMF. You guys call your place IMF? I'm referring to the International Monetary. When governments needed to go to him. Huh? But what they used it for, that different perhaps. Principle being, what do you use it for? So now, think about Solomon's prayer, Sulaiman's prayer, think about ours, and then think about the prayer of Imam Hussein. And think about true freedom. True freedom is dedicating ourselves and reviving that spark to our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues of Imam Hussein. We should embody and share his message. French Revolution, right? The French Revolution, liberty, equality, fraternity. These were the slogans of the French Revolution. The American Revolution, similarly, liberty. What is this saying? Give me liberty or give me death. Who embodied that before the American Revolution? Hussein ibn Ali. That's why the Pez insan ko bedar every weekend. But what has left? And sometimes it's the spirit that has been lost. And that spirit, it was what needs to be revived. And Karbala helps us revive that spirit of excellence, of ihsan, of doing big things in life. Difficult things, but big things that have tremendous impact, that make the world a better place. Not only for you and I, but for broader society. And you know what's amazing about it? The more we incline to it, the teachings of Islam and the Ahlul Bayt, they do the heavy lifting for us. Heavy lifting, a more just society, a more fair society. You don't have to do anything. They sell themselves. You just people to the water. So that spirit, how does it need to be revived? That's what we'll be discussing in the next few nights. Part of that is discussing freedom. Part of that is submitting to God. Why? So that I'm not a prisoner to all the different forms of servitude that are in front of us. पुख्ता ख्याली न रही, बर्क़ तबई न रही, शोई न रही, रह गई रस्म आज़ां, रूह बिलाली न रही, फ़लसफ़ा रह गया, तलक़ीन ग़ज़ाली न रही, मस्जिदें मरसिया खां हैं कि नमाजी न रहे, यानी वो साहिबे औसाफ़े हिजाज़ी. To pray within us. Sometimes we don't even have masajid, right? It's a travesty. It's really sad. Our Imam is born in the Kaaba and he dies in the masjid. His life is between Allah and Allah, and we sometimes don't have masajid. There are complexities, I understand. But the poet here is saying that what made Islam great? It was the spirit of Bilal, where the Prophet said, Bilal, even if though his and he says the attributes of Hijaz. Hijaz is the western bank of modern day Saudi Arabia. There are attributes of sincerity, of honesty, of dedication, of absolute dedication to the principles of justice, faith, brotherhood, sisterhood, fraternity. They're not there anymore. Karbala reminds us to revive them. I've left. The writer, you remember I mentioned the Sorbonne, the University of Paris, where Teddy gave that speech? This gentleman he was educated at the Sorbonne, the same university, many decades later. His name is Dr. Ali Shariati, who you may have heard of. Dr. Ali Shariati is a sociologist, and he wrote on many other people, but one of the people that he wrote on was Hur. And Shariati says that we are all Hur. Every single one of us are Hur. What differentiated horror? What did horror was a decision and action. Injustice, I'm going toward justice, but action to actually get up and go. There may have been other people in Yazid's army who said, I want to go, but they didn't go. But what differentiated Hur was his action of resolution to decide to go and actually act on it. He says at every moment in life, we are all Hur. We have an opportunity to see them. That may be lit. Says sometimes there are ayat of the Quran that teach you worldom in a single line. You know one? You know, people, I'll tell you one way. You take ayat of the Quran that inspire you, put them on your table, put them on your desk at work, put them in your email signature, put them where you don't forget them. They inspire you and they may inspire other people. One of them is Allah says, Aina tadhhabun? Where are you going? One small line, yet and so comprehensive. You know elegance? Remember Euler's formula or Euler's form elegance? E equals mc squared, elegance. There's an elegance there. Where are you going? Not only literally, are you going to the right place? Metaphorically. Are you going to the right place in your mind? Are you going to the right place online? Are you going to the right place, fill in the blank? Torah teaches us that. Are we going to the right place or not? So now, what's the decision that you're going to make? ये जो मजलिस में अश्क बारी है, ये जो मजलिस में है विसाल. This is with respect to Hur, a perspective of the poet on Hur and what his situation may have been prior to going to the camp of Imam Hussein. हम शब इंतज़ारे सुबह विसाल और शब नहीं zindagi guzari hai. In a moment, Hur, he spent one night in contemplation. That wasn't one night, that was a lifetime. Shab nahi zindagi guzari hai. Qadam reh gaya hai khayma shah. I really want. Oh qadam reh gaya hai khayma shah. Hur pa ye waqt kitna bhari hai. How heavy is this moment? Can you imagine going from the enemy to the opposition, from one side to the other side, not knowing if the person is going to accept you? We know he would accept, but in that moment, और फैसले का है एक पल वरना सोचने को तो उम्र सारी है. One moment of decision. You have a lifetime to think about it, to contemplate, to think, what will I do? Hur teaches us act when you know truth, act there. And then, you know, we have narrations when you know that you're to give charity on it immediately. Act everything. We're all Hur. He finds himself in a situation where he for the night before Ashura, and his own companions, when he's on the camp of Yazid, they say, Hur, if someone were to ask us who's the most brave and courageous warrior in the camp of Yazid, we would say your name. Remember when Imam Hussein got to Karbala, Hur was there, and Hur is who stopped Imam Hussein. He was on the reins of the horse of Imam Hussein. And when mourn you, meaning how dare you stop times to spark on and awaken them, you need Imam Hussein did. He shook him. Then Hur showed the goodness that was within him, was remaining. He said, if your mother was anyone else, I would have said the same thing right back to you. Mother being Fatima Zahra, Sayyidatun Nisa al-Alamin, the Prophet said. He understood. At that junction, Imam Hussein made it clear he has potentiality of good. He can be. How Kareem is Imam Hussein. It's the generosity of Imam Hussein. It baffles. You know how generous he was? I'll give you one example. दोनों जहां मांगता नियामत हुसैन से मांगता मांगता रहा बैत हुसैन से कम जर मांगता रहा बैत हुसैन से और आया था लेकिन कमाल है लेकिन कमाल है हुर सबसे पहले but he took Jannat, he took paradise first from Hussein. Who is this person? Imam Hussein forgives Hur, says, I know, I find myself Bain al Jannat now I'm inside and I've left everything. He says, what are you going to do? He says, I'm going to the camp of Hussein. Some say he took his son, and some say he took his servant with him. 3 people depart, going on to the other side. On the other side is Imam Hussein, and with him is Abbas. Hussein sees it, and it's as if he smiles. And the camp of Imam Hussein, the companions may be thinking, who's coming? And Imam Hussein says, Abbas, Akbar, go, my guest is coming. Go, my guest is coming. Go greet my guest. And at that junction, Hur is coming from the other side. The narrations say Hur asks his son and his servant to cover his head. They said, why? He said, because I'm a criminal in the court of Hussein. I've done injustice in his. I'm the reason why his children, their water has been cut off from them. I'm the reason, I'm the one who was ordered to stop Imam Hussein here. Tie my hands. He says, as we get, tell me what we're seeing. At that junction, that as they're getting closer, Ali Akbar is coming from one side, from the other. Hur is asking, what do you see? Oh, my father, the son says, that we are seeing Abbas, we are seeing Ali Akbar, we are seeing Imam Hussein himself taking some steps forward. He says, that's enough. Throw me towards the ground. Throw me towards the feet of Hussein. I will meet him in that state. At that junction, he throws himself, and they throw him towards the ground. And he calls out. He says, oh, son of Fatima Zahra, oh, son of responsible for making sure that you are stopped here in the plains of Karbala. Can I be forgiven? And only Hussein ibn Ali could do what was done next. He picked up Hur from the ground and he hugged him. Humanity, I have not seen beyond this. The edge of humanity. He hugs him and he says, Hur, I have forgiven you and my Lord has forgiven you. Who is that who forgives on the behalf of God? Because he was the representative of God on earth at that time. But then he doesn't stop. Hussein, he says, to apologize to you. He said, my master, apology? I'm the one who needs to apologize. He said, no, Hur. Yesterday when we met, you were my guest. And I had something to give you. You know, when they met in the early days, the 2nd, the 3rd of Muharram, Imam Hussein had control of the water, and the battalion of Hur. Hussein could have won the battle right there and then. Well, how could he have won it? He could have won it by cutting off water to the army of Hur. But anything from the far in Siffin and the son in Kareen and Yazid on Karbala, you'll find the same principle. When Ali al-Murtad full of the water, he gave it. On the others, Hussein had control of water, he gave. When Yazid had control of water, I don't need and you don't philosophy. Just tell me who gave water and who cut off water. I'll know and you'll know who's on the path of truth. Basic human rights. He says, yesterday when you came, I had water to give you. On that day, on the second, the third, the Muharram, when they got there, Imam Hussein, take this water and give all of the men of Hur, and his cells moved their heads away. When they said they've had enough. He said, yesterday I had water to give you. Today I'm ashamed because I don't have water to give you. Forgive me because the water has dried up in our tents. Hur begins to weep. And at that junction, Hur says, my master, just allow me one thing. He said, let me go and sacrifice life and my son's life and my servant and should be going first before. And he says, Hur, how can I let you go? And Imam Hussein says, very well, Hur, very well. Even Imam Hussein letting the companions first was part of his compassion. Why? Because he knew they were thirsty, and the ones who had gone for the battlefield, thirst would be quenched sooner by Saki Kausar, by Rasulullah, by Amir al-Mu'mineen. So he says, finally, so okay, go. And Hur says, before me will go my son. Why? Because I want to make sure he put eyes on this path, on the right path. For a moment where the enemy were part of that, but they began to strike and they said he's a traitor. From there, ambushed him. They struck him to the point that Hur's son falls toward the ground. And when he falls towards the ground, he calls on to his father. He says, my father, come to my assistance, come to my aid. The narrations say that when this cry was said and Hur's son is falling towards the ground, Hur runs towards the battlefield to get and look after his son in his final moment. But what does Hur see? In that he sees that already in the battle, Hussein ibn Ali, Imam, is at the body of Hur's son, and he has taken. Hussein sees Hur. This is a young son, this is a youthful son, you are an elder father, this is not a place for a father to be. Go away, I will take care of them and I will bring his body back to the tents. This was Imam al-Hussein. Ajrukum ala Allah. Finally, Imam Hussein brings the body back and then fights courageously, and he fights courageously to the point that the narrations say the enemy said, and they fought him from every angle. Hur, in his final moments when he is struck, he called, Salamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. He says, salutations, my final salams on you, Aba Abdullah. Imam al-Hussein, at that junction, Imam Hussein runs towards the battlefield. He pushes the enemy away. He takes Hur. He puts Hur's head in his lap. My master, my Maula, the forgive. Am I been loyal to you? Have I been faithful to you? Says Hur, your mother named you appropriately. She named you correctly. Why? Hur means free. Hur was a free man. And Imam Amir Hussein says, Anta hurrun fi dunya wal akhirah. You are free in this world, and you are free in the next. Hur's soul departed and went towards the heavens. But I will ask you, Imam al-Hussein, about a final moment. You went to Hur's son in his final moment. In fact, you even told Hur that get away, Hur. This is the moment where a father should not see the body of his son in the final moments. I ask that on the day of Ashura, Imam al-Hussein and Hur consider this, that it was none other than Hussein ibn Ali and a son like that by the name of Ali al-Akbar with a spear in his chest. There was no one to come to the assistance of Hussein. It was an elderly father who took his for the son of Fatima. Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'minin. Sallallahu alayki ya Fatima al-Zahra, Sayyidat al-Nisa al-Alamin. Sallallahu alayka ya Hasan al-Mujtaba. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. حسين يا حسين حسين.
علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، 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 علم میرے مرشد میرے کی پاک دعا بن کر اب گھر گھر پر لہراتا ہے علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، میں نوکر ہمیں نوکر ہمیں نوکر مولا غازی کا، علم میرے مرشد غازی، تیرے مولا غازی کیا کہنا، تیری در کی نوکری کیا کہنا، تیری کرم نوازی کیا کہنا، تیرے نام کی حاضری کیا کہنا، جہاں دسترخوان سجتا ہے، جہاں دسترخوان سجتا ہے، اس گھر کی شان بتاتا ہے علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، ہمیں نوکر مولا غازی کا، علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، علم میرے مرشد غازی، میں غم سے جب گھبراتا ہوں تو پاس علم کے جاتا ہوں، حال سناتا ہوں، میرے سر پر سایہ اور بتاتا ہے علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، میں نوکر ہمیں نوکر نوکر مولا غازی کا، علم میرے مرشد غازی کا، علم مرشد غازی کا، یا غازی فرماؤ نا عباس کرم فرماؤ نا، کبھی موج سے یہ دکھلاؤ نا، میرے گھر بھی تو جا تیرا علم کبھی میرے گھر بھی آؤ نا سرکار میرے گھر آئیں گے سرکار میرے گھر آئیں گے میرے دل کی آس بناتا ہے علم میرے مرضی کا علم مرشد گاری کا میں نوکر ہمیں نوکر مولا غازی کا علم میرے مرشد غازی کا علم میرے مرشد غازی کا علم میرے مرشد غازی تو تیرا ہے میں پیار کروں تو تیرا ہے جو اس کے دیپ جلاتا ہے یہ اس کے باغ جگاتا ہے علم میرے مرشد غازی کا علم میرے
اللهم صل على محمد.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك تسد المعصومين من الحسين ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك غريب الغراب، السلام عليك معين الضعفاء، والسلام عليك شمس الشموس أيها المدفون بأرض راضي بالقدر والقضاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. يا صاحب الأس والزمان، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان، أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وزورك ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله آبائي في هذه الساعة وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.